Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. I am really excited. I have an amazing guest for you this week. Anissa Downey, thank you for being on the episode.
Thank you for having me.
So Anissa comes from an extremely unique position. Anissa, her and her husband were clients, right? She came in as a client of Tower Leadership.
Yes.
And so was on that side. So came to meet Tower Leadership, started to implement things that Tower Leadership was telling her to do, had tremendous success as a practice. I mean, revenues went up, hired multiple associates, started having more quality of time, and then took all that information. And then she, both you guys decided, we didn't poach you, right?
No.
Decided to have Anissa join the Tower team. And the reason why is Anissa was so passionate about the work she was doing with her own practice that she wanted to take that same passion, energy, and pour it into other practices, creating this ripple effect. And so they decided it was good for her to come on the team. And we are so excited to have you. And she trains teams across the nation in the things that she learned from Tower Leadership and had huge success with. And so she is in this unique position of being on both sides of the coin, now inside Tower Leadership, where before you were a client of Tower Leadership. What I really want to talk about is what makes what you did unique. And then how do you translate that into success and maybe some of the things you see. So let me just jump in with a question.
Sure.
So their practice, your practice, I should say, grew dramatically in a very short period of time. Yes. What do you attribute that to?
Listening and following your instructions. Simple.
Now, I don't want to make it sound like that. That sounds like a kid response.
It's really not. It's really not.
I think the thing is following a system, right?
Very much so. You guys had already done the work. We had hired you as our consultants, and I'm a firm believer that if you're going to hire someone to do something, that you listen to what they say. You were the expert in that situation, and I just literally followed it step by step. You would tell us to do something, we would go back, we would sit down, we would implement it, and we would watch the needles move. And that's exciting to see.
How much of that process did you modify? Did you change?
Very little. There were a couple of things that just didn't fit very well with us at the time.
Okay.
But once we started moving into things, we realized that we were missing pieces, and those were the things that we would have to go back and add. So it is not meant to be modified. It works.
Well, now, and by the way, this is a Dental Wealth podcast. I'm not trying to do a promo for Tower Leadership. Really, what I really want you to do is understand this. And this is really what I want somebody who's listening to this to understand, which is when you buy into any process, right, whether it's physical fitness, right, it might be your gym trainer, right, telling you something to do, whether it's marriage counseling, whether it's a practice, whether it's, when you buy into any process, whether it's a business education system, what I always tell people is, right, there's people that dabble in something.
Right.
There's people that are wannabes who talk about it a lot but don't actually do it, like the person who's always talking about the gym but doesn't actually go. And there's people that go all in. I think one of the things that make you unique and why you had the results is because your ability to go back and just put things in place, right? Which is, I think what most people try to do when they get into any system is they take the pieces they like, which is looking at certain things and saying, well, my trainer tells me that I need to work out 5 days a week, but I think I'm going to do 3 because it fits better in my work calendar. I know my trainer's telling me that I should be eating this regimented diet, but donuts work really well, and there's always a work birthday or some reason to eat different, right? And so it's interesting what I find is that when people, we all have to look at it, right? When you're in a process, it's going all in and just being able to implement the things that you're supposed to do. And my encouragement for anybody, whether it's Tower Leadership's process or another process you bought into, which is go all in. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it is not very intelligent to only partially do things. I have never done things partially. If
That's
I'm
for
gonna do
sure.
something, I'm going to do it all the way. How do you know something's going to work unless you keep your mind open and you go for it? Even in short bursts of time. If people would just take things and do them 3-6 months, they're going to see the differences of those. And so I think that if you don't buy into the process completely, just don't do it at all.
Oh man, that's like, I feel like you just like, what a great response. I think that's what a beautiful thing to say, which is, you know, especially I think we're recording this in November of 2019. So I think what a great time to be having that conversation. I think what happens is New Year's resolutions are coming up, right? And so that's the time of year where everyone says, in the next 12 months or, you know, this year or my New Year's resolution. Which by the way, I like starting New Year's resolutions in like November because I feel like everybody else is, I always look at what the average person does and then try to get like 2 months ahead of it. Or get a step on people. But here's what I would tell people. The problem is they want to just modify a process. And what I find compelling about you is not just you as a person, but I think that watching your results and watching what you guys implemented and watching all the things just absolutely fall into place. And, you know, you come out to me and go, I just do what you tell me to do. And I love that because whether it's me or somebody else, I think you have to buy into a process and I think you have to figure out what it is. You know, one of the things I tell people all the time is figure out where you're going, right? Figure out what it is you want to get accomplished. And then draw like a T-shaped grid and put like on one side closer and the other side further. And does this get you closer or further? And it helps people make decisions because what ends up happening is you'll realize very quickly that modifying a process puts you further from your goals, right? Would you agree with that?
It slows you down.
Yeah.
Totally slows you down. It's interesting because the couple little things that we had set back, I look at now at the progress that we made in that year's time, and I wonder how much faster we would have done that had I not made those couple of changes. You know, how much faster things would have done. So, you know, one of the things that I was always taught is that you can learn something from anyone and that you should keep an open mind because it's like a parachute. It works best when it's open. And so that's what I did with you guys is I kept my mind open to what you guys were saying, and it resonated so well that it was easy for me to buy into. The
best keep getting better, right? I mean, I think that's, and I love that you said, you know, I could have gotten there even quicker, which, by the way, your results were dramatic. But you could, even then you go, I could get there quicker, right? I could have gotten there in a quicker period of time. Had I even done even more and just put my head down and said, I'm just going to do what they tell me to do, which is kind of interesting because it's like so much of what we do is, by the way, one of the things I think people do is not only do we modify the process, but then we go find people who help us justify modifying our process, which is going out and finding and asking all these people who are not the expert in the area what they think about you modifying the process. Therefore, when you do modify the process, for instance, let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I mean is let's assume that you're back on I always think health and business somehow go hand to hand. Like it's very analogous. And so we go back to the personal trainer exercise and it's the same thing of saying, well, going back to family and saying, well, they want me to work out 5 days a week, but that just seems crazy with my work calendar. Wouldn't you agree? And so we find people in our lives that allow us to cheat a process, to cheat a system, to cheat our own success. And then when we get the affirmation, then it even allows us more to stop doing it. Then we feel good when it's done by saying, I knew it wouldn't work. And then we tell other people when it fails, by the way. I think one of the things we do is we go back to those people and say, see, I knew it wasn't going to work, so that we feel better about not following a process. That was a long-winded statement, but I mean.
No, exactly. Well, people are going to take the path of least resistance. And in business, if you take that path, it's going to be least resistance because there's nothing to bump up against. You truly need to dig in and follow the systems that you guys laid out because you've proven them over and over with hundreds of dentists. And so who am I to second guess what was told to us. And as a trainer, it's so exciting for me to be able to know that works, and to sit down with the doctor and his spouse and say, guys, I'm so excited, because in a year from now, when we're in a workshop and I can hand you the microphone and I can say, what have you accomplished? I'm going to be standing out there cheering, because I know how much you guys are going to change if you just follow the process so simply. It's so exciting to see.
Now you transitioned to a statement. I'm glad you did, which is good. So Anissa came on board and left. By the way, she started a practice, built a practice, has went through all the tribes and tribulations of a practice, team members, difficulties with marketing and growth and taxes and all the other stuff that business owners deal with, right?
Yeah.
And then now is on our training side, which is, I love it. Like, that's why I wanted to have her on a podcast, is because it's so amazing to have you here, because now we're on this other side where it's like, okay, I mean, by the way, what a gift, because one of the things we talk about at Tower Leadership is this idea of giving back and impacting others. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate is by, you could have just had your own success and stayed with your own success in your own window. Mm-hmm. But now you're out there creating this ripple effect, which is taking the information that you implemented and had success with, and now you're helping teams out in the marketplace. So Anissa's now, in our training department and working with teams all across this country. So how has it been moving from being inside the practice to outside the practice? And then what do you see when you go out into the field?
It's so exciting to be able to step outside of that small bubble of world that we were in, which was phenomenal to have your own personal success. But to be able to step that out and to replicate it is so rewarding. One of the things that we talk about in our leadership trainings is the impacts. What impact do you want to have? What is your why? And one of the examples that I give is the words that you use is the ripple effect. I absolutely love to see that when even the team members get it, not just from a business standpoint, but from a personal standpoint of implementing these procedures and how they can impact their lives, which in turn impact their family and their communities, and you see that ripple effect go out, that is hugely rewarding.
I had a teammate recently say to me, of a doctor, that she said, I've lost 10 pounds in like 2 weeks, right? And it's interesting because at Tower Leadership, we really believe that it's not, that the business is a tool, and that it's the lives we want to change and people's lives. And if people start changing their own lives, it affects the practice, and it affects revenues and patience and growth and all the other things. So we start with the individual as leader, right? Leadership, right? So I love what you're saying about the ripple effect, and I love to see your post. Has there any been any challenges maybe a better question is, what challenges do you feel that teams face? Or if a doctor's listening to this right now and thinking, well, that sounds great, but what do you think the biggest challenges they might face when you walk in, or they're facing when you walk in, and how what you do kind of gives some clarity to move forward?
I think one of the things in the dental world that's misconstrued is that there's a ceiling, that's the most they can do, that they're stuck in that position and they're going to be doing that same thing for the next 20 years if they choose to stay in dentistry. And so when we showed them that it is a vehicle and that they need to think outside the walls, and the ceiling, the sky's the limit, there's not really a ceiling there, and that with their personal growth and change in the practice, that opportunity grows for them, and that it's a breath of fresh air. It gets them excited that there's more to life than just answering the phones and making sure that the patient pays their bill. That there's more that they can impact other than just, thank you for coming today and have a great day. It's such a bigger picture for them by the time we leave.
So what you're saying is, if I understand, is the team members themselves now have we talk about ceiling, because I talk about ceilings all the time, right? Yes. We lift what they believe is possible in their life, right? We lift what they thought was possible. They were coming to work with one like idea, and which is one of the reasons why they're asking for a raise all the time, is because of the fact that they don't know the purpose of them being there, and now they have a new purpose.
Right.
They understand the vision for their life, and then they're going back to implement those things.
Yes, exactly. And which on the other side of that, as a business owner, and my husband is the doctor, you feel like you're constantly pushing and pulling by yourself in that, and you're trying to row that boat alone. And once you finally get your team involved and you get them excited, oh man, it is such an amazing thing to see, to walk into work and everybody be excited to be there, and realize that what we do on an individual basis has such a great impact on the practice as a whole, on our families as a whole, and not just, going in and doing a job.
I love that you said that, that sometimes you feel like you're pushing or pulling this thing all by yourself, right? And I think that sometimes what people believe is they could just give a quarter a raise or 50 cents a raise and things would change. But it only changes for a little bit, wouldn't you agree? Without them having purpose, without them knowing where they're going or believing that their lives can be modified or changed, then a short-term incentive really won't get them there long-term. Would you agree with that statement?
I would absolutely agree with that. And again, going back to the training aspect of it, that is one of some of the questions that we ask the team. And it's questions that doctors don't typically ask their teams, or the doctors have even thought to ask their teams. What's interesting is very rarely is money ever mentioned. When we talk about
Isn't
their
that
visions,
interesting?
yes, when
So
we discuss their own visions individually, in addition to that, it is extremely rare that money is mentioned. If it is, it's in conjunction with a bigger picture for them of what they want in life, not just the immediate gratification of the money.
So you're trying to say is that people don't just come to work for money.
Not at all.
It's funny because I see so much of that in the marketplace, and so we call that, I think I've talked about that even on this podcast, the difference between transactional and relational, which is this idea that transactional works short term, right? Just giving somebody an incentive short term. It will push up maybe their productivity short term. It's called the Hawthorne effect, but the long term is probably not going to stick. As a business owner, and it felt like because I know you had done some of that within your own practice, but still maybe didn't feel like the team was totally there, did you?
No, it was always a struggle. It was difficult to reach them, and it was because I wasn't asking the right questions.
Yeah.
It was because I was focused on the business aspect of it only. We had some other trainings and things, and we knew how to measure the KPIs. We knew those things to do, but there was something missing, and it was because we had not sat down and added the human element to it.
What a good, powerful statement.
It really was, and once all of that came together, it was so much easier to push that granite ball, that we talk about. It just took off and ran, and it felt so good. It made so much more sense.
If I'm hearing you right, what you did was you implemented leadership.
Absolutely.
Which is the missing piece to so much of this, which is why this is not tower management, it's tower leadership, which is this idea that management is all those processes. Management is KPIs. And by the way, as well as I do, I love numbers and I love doing that, but I think that we miss, as you said it, the human element is missed so often. And because we miss this human element, we wonder why this training that we spent money for isn't staying in place, right? And doctors come to me if that's the case, and they'll say, they just won't listen, they won't do it long term, and it's because they're missing, as you said, the human element.
Yes. One of the things that when we even in our workshops and trainings, and we talk about the visions and things, and you have those doctors who are very controlling, and they start spouting out what the vision's going to be without including the team.
Yeah, so that's common.
Yes, and you see that deadpan look on their face. And so one of the questions that I ask is, team, is this what would get you out of bed in the morning? Are you fired up to come to work? And they're, kind of looking sideways, not wanting to answer, and no, it's not. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And it's always interesting because it's not what the doctor expects. The doctor's brace looking at me thinking, oh, here it comes, I want some money. And it's like, well, I want to go to the nursing homes and I want to, take care of the patients. Or, I would love to go talk to the kids in the school about dental health because I didn't have that experience as a child. So it's very interesting that when we slow down and actually ask people what they want, it's not what we think.
I'm just going to say that again. When we slow down and ask people what they want, sometimes it's not what you think.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting because sometimes we think, and we go back and ask our friends again, we think that everyone comes to work for money, even though every study has shown us that that's not true. Now, it's fair to say that if you cut someone's pay in half, they would probably walk, but to say it's not the driving motivation. And I love that you said something about the vision, which is so true, which is that I think that when I go tell doctors to create the vision, they create the vision without the team. And then they go back to that transactional thought process, which is it's all about me. And they're here to serve me versus my job is to serve them, which is actually true leadership. True leadership is making sure you're serving the team and not the other way around. And I think that's where transactional consulting comes in, is transactional consulting makes it all about the doctor. And it's interesting because if you want to have wealth, if you want to have long-term success, if you want to have a great quality of life, I mean, I had a doctor tell me recently, he was like, I wouldn't even care if my revenues didn't go up, but now I'm working one day a week clinically. If I was working one day a week clinically and my team was happy, I'd be happy. So sometimes we're not even sure what it is we want, right? And so I think that assuming that the team wants a certain thing without getting to know them is a mistake. And so I think what we're saying here is if I can sum it up and you tell me if I'm wrong here, sure. If you're going to do a process, if you're gonna do a process, buy in, right? Go all in, absolutely. Whatever it is, right? And here's the interesting: it's an investment.
Yes.
Some investments will work out. Some investments won't. Right. That's the nature of investing. But if you spend your entire life halfway into anything and everything maybe, it's kind of interesting. You might translate that into your personal life and the things you do, right? So don't go halfway in your marriage. Don't go halfway in your friendships. Don't go halfway in your physical health. Don't go halfway in your consulting. Don't go, like if you're going to buy into a process, then go all in, right? And the other thing is, leadership is key.
It is the main key. And here's what I wish doctors would understand, is what is their biggest asset. And it's their teams. And they've got to focus on their teams. And once they do that, all the other pieces fall into place.
Can I high five you? Like
Sure.
That was like an awesome statement. Like I love that. I mean, really good. I mean, people are not giving the teams the credit that they need. And I'm not talking about some wow culture training, the power of wow stuff. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about feel good stuff and just make them feel good or buying someone take them out to a spa day. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. It's getting down to what makes people tick. It gets down to what they want in life, not buying them some gift or some rah pump you up. It's about strategically asking somebody what they want to get out of life and then helping them achieve it, which is completely different. By the way, you can't just buy that, can you? So different. So I want to thank you for being here. I could talk to you. We could do this for like probably... Sure. 8 hours and just keep going. Maybe or maybe not people would keep listening. I'm not sure. But look, the idea, take this perspective in. I want you to take this perspective in because for somebody, who's married a doctor, who's been inside of practice, who I guess we both have, right? That makes us unique. Yes. So for both of us to be in that position, like I've been inside of a practice, I know what it looks like on the inside, and I know how to create a multi-doctor practice, and I know how to help other doctors do it, and I know how to hire doctors, and you've done the same, right? So it's this idea of, me taking the success and creating a strategy, and then watching somebody put that into place and seeing that that's success, and then now translating it into other teams. It's a unique perspective, right? Which is having, Anissa as part of our team, being on one side of it and then now going out and training other teams is, for me, not just something that just feels cool, but it's an honor. And it's a huge, huge thing for our teams. And, it's the Dental Wealth podcast. Now, wealth means different things to different people. But if you listen closely, we're giving you the secret. And here's the funny part, which is that the great people, the people that have a lot of success, they'll listen to the message in a podcast like this and they'll get it and they'll go implement it. Some people will listen to this podcast and go, I don't know what he's talking about. Right. I would encourage you, if you've taken the time to listen to this podcast, go all into a process. And I would encourage you to go all in with leadership in the next 12 months. And I'd say the next 12 months. Don't wait till January 1st. Maybe we'll give you a Thanksgiving break, and then you come back like December, and you go all in to a process, which I believe is leadership. I believe it's focusing on your team. I believe if the doctors would focus on their team for the next 12 months and pour into the team, by the way, you have to pour into yourself so you can pour into the team,
That's right.
to be fair.
Yes.
But if they poured into their team for the next 12 months, they would wake up with a dramatically different quality of life and a dramatically different practice. Agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Anissa, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to us today. If you've enjoyed this, we're going to have so many more episodes. Listen to some of the past episodes. It's my honor to have Anissa here today. She might be out in your office at some point, and that'll be such a blessing for you and for them. But hit subscribe, be part of things like this. Don't just listen to things like this, right? If you're gonna take the time to listen to it, you gotta get from it. Hit subscribe, write down some notes. Hey, these are the things I'm gonna implement. You gotta take action. So if you're gonna listen to this, part of the process would be to listen to this podcast, write down what you can do, and then go implement. So go all into a process. If you're listening to it, go all in, and then hit subscribe. And then if it's helpful, go share. Great leaders share great information so that they can help other people. So share that information so that you can talk to other people about the great things that are happening in your life. Agree?
That's right. Absolutely.
Anissa, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a great week.